You can't make me feel guiltier than I already do. I'm sorry. If something happens to you over there, I'll never forgive myself. But that's not enough to put my life on the line again. Even if I came back, I don't think I'd come back the same. You were always the only one who could face those monsters. Today, on the Comic Book Report, Comics by Night, Oblivion Song, Chapter 1. Stick around and check it out. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dominic, and you are tuning in to The Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. All month long, we'll be doing our coverage of all things creepy, eerie, Halloweeny, and horror-filled in the world of comics in my segments, Comics by Night. As I mentioned at the top, we'll be looking at Oblivion Song today from Image Comics. But before we dive in, here are a couple quick facts. Oblivion Song was written by Robert Kirkman and penciled by Lorenzo De Felici. The issues collected in this volume were initially published by Image Comics in 2018. This trade paperback collects the first 6 issues of the Oblivion Song series, and the trade itself comes in at 144 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through this collection more or less in its entirety, and I might be commenting on some plot elements, so you've been warned. And there she is, the first trade paperback for Oblivion Song by Robert Kirkman and Lorenzo De Felici. A few of you faithful subscribers might recognize this trade paperback. I picked it up on the free Batman Day episode, and it may have popped up in a video or two since then. And I, for one, am eager to give this a review. As we continue to take a look at the cover art across this volume, which I do like, and is very indicative to what you'll see within its pages, I would just like to say how I heard about Oblivion Song. It's nothing spectacular. Basically, I'm a fan of Robert Kirkman, as so many of you probably are. For those that don't know, he's really famous for things like The Walking Dead, or his series Invincible. I've personally read handfuls of both of those series, as well as seen a lot of their TV adaptations, and I've listened to several interviews over the years from Robert Kirkman, and he's just a guy I like to follow, and I try to pick up when he has something new going on. That being said, I really slept on Oblivion Song. I had no idea that this was coming out the last couple years until relatively recently, and when I saw a trade on sale at my local comic shop, I thought it was time to go ahead and pick it up. A couple things about this series in my hands. This volume collects the first 6 issues of Oblivion Song, and doing some online research, it sounds like Kirkman wants this series to be about 36 issues, which I believe he's getting close to finishing now. So for collected edition collectors out there, that's going to break down to about 6 trade paperbacks in total, and possibly 3 of the oversized hardcover collections, which isn't too much to collect, all things considered. Now, one of the things I do like as well is that instead of calling this a Volume 1, it's called Chapter 1. And why I like this is because it feels like it advertises it correctly. Because in the pages of this volume, I wouldn't say you have a full, complete, fleshed out story. I would say it very much feels like you have a Chapter 1. And that chapter has a good beginning, middle, and close, but the storyline is still just beginning. And it leaves you wanting to read that chapter too. I bring that up for people that do like to have a complete storyline told within a trade volume. It's not so dissatisfying that you feel like you're just cliffhanged at the end. You do get like the end of one thing, the beginning of a next, but it doesn't feel like a full story. It feels like a chapter. And what you get in this chapter is a solid beginning for where this story, I believe, might go. Oblivion Song is a story that takes place 10 years after a cataclysmic event occurs within the city of Philadelphia, where hundreds of thousands of its citizens, along with some of its landmass, appears to have vanished in thin air. Where those people and places vanish to appears to be some kind of other dimension filled with monsters, a place they come to call Oblivion. Enter our protagonist, Nathan Cole, who has technology that allows him to jump into that dimension of Oblivion, where he searches for survivors who have somehow managed to live the last decade in this horrible dimension. And the story in these pages really build out from there, as we come to discover more about our hero and a lively cast of secondary characters from his colleagues, family members, bosses, and other citizens. And while I believe Kirkman's narrative voice is here from the very beginning of this series, it's really the art from Lorenzo De Felici that makes this series pop in my mind. Favoring, I feel, a little bit of a cooler color palette, De Felici's art soars in that Oblivion realm, where we are treated to some grotesque, almost organic-looking architecture and hideous, monstrous creatures. This is what lends the horror to an otherwise pretty hard science fiction series. To be frank, Kirkman was what drew me to the series, but it was the cover on this trade from De Felici that really sold me on the book. For a Volume 1, this was a good start. While I don't believe the character of Nathan Cole is particularly memorable, at least in this volume, this series is really buoyed by his surrounding cast of characters for me, who feel a little more nuanced and developed and have stories that I find to be a little more compelling. It's enough to make me want to see what happens in these characters' lives moving forward. While I don't think Oblivion's song has a strong premiere next to the likes of The Walking Dead or Invincible by Robert Kirkman, I have to remind myself that sometimes good things take time. Will this series shape up? I'm honestly not sure, but I think what I found in this collection makes me want to at least give it another trade's worth of work, as I resist the temptation to evaluate this against some of Robert Kirkman's other more popular series. And as we make our way toward the end of this first collection, I think it's time to give Oblivion Song, Chapter 1, a grade. For its wonderfully grotesque artwork, a colorful cast of supporting characters, and a fresh start to a new science fiction / horror series, The Comic Book Report gives Oblivion Song, Chapter 1, by Robert Kirkman and Lorenzo De Felici, a C+. I love a good monster science fiction series as much as the next guy, and I really do adore the work of Robert Kirkman. But Oblivion Song was hardly the siren song that I hoped it would be, at least in this first offering. While I will likely continue to read the series, I'm not gripped, nor would I recommend this as a must-read. If you've continued the series, and it gets better, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, this has been the Comic Book Report, Comics by Night. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon so you'll be notified of all our videos all month long. Good night.